Hello and welcome to this iChimp video on the iCloud activation lock, bypass and unlock. This video was recorded in 2018 after the iOS 11 update, so the information was brand new and up to date at that point in time. Now the first question you might ask yourself is, what is this activation lock all about? Now, if you're like me and you've ever bought a used iPhone or iPad via eBay or Craigslist or one of the many outlets out there, you may have come across an issue where you try and activate it as your own, where it asks for the login details and Apple ID of the previous owner. Now, that's great if you know those details, or you can get in touch with the individual involved and have them put those details in. The reason they appear is because the activation lock basically ties the device to the iCloud account. This is a security measure by Apple, and it's a very, very good and clever one, because it means if your iPhone is stolen, unless that individual knows your login details for iCloud, they can't do anything with it, which is great. It means that you know your device is fine, secure, and there's not going to be anyone who steals it who will be able to reuse it or pass it on. A great deterrent. However, this issue becomes a little more complex when it comes to the used market. Because these devices are quite complicated, people often forget to remove data, never mind remove things like their iCloud account. So you may find picking up a used device that this activation lock is still on there. It's incredibly annoying, and it is something that you really want to get rid of, especially if you've spent a few quid on this new device and you want to use it. So there's two ways of getting around this that I know of. One is called the iPhone, the iCloud unlock, and one is called the iCloud bypass. Now, people tend to use these two terms interchangeably online. However, they are actually two completely different things, and they offer different abilities when you come to using your device. So regard them as differently from each other. The question is, which of the two methods are best, and why do people get these two terms confused? Well, let's have a look at the pros and cons of both, and I'll probably explain a little bit more about what each one is and what they do. So on this slide here, you'll see we've got the unlock and the bypass benefits. The pros of both methods of using this particular method over the other. Now, when it comes to the unlock, the top point says it all. You can use your device normally. So it means that your iPhone or iPad can be set up as though it's your own with no issues whatsoever. You can use all the features. You can use it as though it was a brand new device you bought yourself from the Apple shop. That's fantastic. The bypass has some limitations, and the good thing about it is it's free, so there's no cost involved, whereas you tend to find unlocking in some circumstances may have a cost involved. Bypassing you tend to find doesn't. However, there are drawbacks with the bypassing that the unlocking doesn't have, because bypassing only allows you to use some functionality. The good thing about it though is you can do it straight away, and if unlocking has failed for you for whatever reason, bypassing is still an option for you. So if you try to unlock, it hasn't worked, you can bypass. So if we look at the drawbacks of each of them, you can see that unlocking's only got a couple of drawbacks. In fact, as I mentioned earlier, it may cost you some money, and also you've got a wait time involved when the actual unlock is being processed. Bypassing, as you can see, has got far more drawbacks. a little bit fiddly. Certain functionality doesn't work. For instance, if you've got the phone, the iPhone that is, you can't actually phone people using it. A lot of people tend to not use phones for phoning these days. They tend to use some of the other functionality, the apps and so on. Well, standard apps, for instance, won't work on a bypass. However, they do have other apps which mimic them. So for instance, if you use Facebook, say, and you use the Facebook app with a bypass, you do have access to an alternate version of your Facebook app. So there is functionality there that means that your device becomes useful. One of the biggies, I guess, between the two of them that is a big issue is that you can't necessarily access on the bypass any of the information that's been on the phone previously. So for instance, if you've got photographs, text messages and so on, and you forgot your iCloud password, and you've got no way of resetting that iCloud password, then you can't access any of the data that you've previously saved on your handset. Now, if you've bought a used one, that's probably not going to be an issue. You don't really want to see the information that the previous owner had. So that's probably not going to be an issue for you. But in certain circumstances, for instance, if the phone belonged to a relative, and they've had some kind of issue, memory loss, or someone's passed away, then you may want to have access to that information, and it's not necessarily possible. With the bypass, it's not possible. With the unlock, it may be possible. Now, when it comes to unlocking, that obviously means it's the better of the two options, and if I had a personal choice, I would always try to unlock first. And there's a lot of different methods of unlocking that are available out there. If you do a Google search for iCloud unlock or iCloud bypass, for instance, you'll see all sorts of results coming up with different companies with different sorts of services available that they claim can actually do this service for you. They are roughly broken down into 4 types. One, software downloads, and that's where you can actually download a piece of software onto your computer. You plug your phone in, and it claims it'll interface with your phone and link up with the Apple website and do an unlock that way. Second one's online tools. They work in a very similar way. You tend to find you put in your IMEI number from your phone, the number that actually identifies your phone as being unique and yours, and it then it claims to interface with the Apple servers and do an unlock that way. The third type are downloadable instructions of various types. So people say, if you pay me a certain amount of money, you can get this cheat sheet or this list of tips, and on there it'll tell you exactly what you need to do. And the fourth kind is unlocking services, where you pay a sum of money to a company and they'll go away, perform the lock, and then come back and say, this lock's happened, you can now use your device normally. Usually with some kind of instructions for finalization of what you need to do to actually have the device unlocked. So they tend to be the 4 types. In my experience, I've done an awful lot of testing, and I found that the software downloads don't work. What they tend to do is download a lot of well, I guess there's no other way of saying it, viruses of one type or another that basically are going to monitor what you're doing, your keystrokes in your keyboard, and potentially can cause your machine a lot of damage, and in the worst case scenario can actually cost you money through monitoring what you're doing and hacking and stealing passwords and logins and things of this nature. So they're very dubious. They are very, very persuasive, and they look like they're doing a great job. The information that comes up on screen looks really legit. My experience with these is avoid them at all costs, especially if you're a computer novice. They can cause so much damage. Online tools, they're very similar. They can look really, really convincing. The way the screens are laid out and the things that it says it's doing with interfacing, and they look fantastic. However, when it comes down to it, they don't actually do anything, and you usually find that after a period of time up will come an advert or some description, and it'll say if you click 6 adverts that come up, then we'll then allow you to have this unlock finalized. All that's happening there is the manufacturer of that particular online tool is using it as an excuse to get as many people to click on their ads as possible. They then generate money from the ads. So it's an online method of marketing, and it's just a scam. Generally, no harm comes of it apart from the disappointment of the unlock not happening. The downloadable instructions and PDFs, generally I find them useless. The information that they contain promise the world, but actually when it comes down to it, they actually deliver nothing or almost nothing. Unlocking services, again, these are a mixed bunch. Some can take hundreds of dollars payment, some very little, some actually claim that they're free. But in just about every case that I found, regardless of whether it was paid, unpaid, small amounts or large amounts, they resulted in disappointment and they couldn't actually perform the unlock whatsoever. However, what I did find was that in my testing, there was certain things that seemed to be better than others. Firstly, if you've got any choice in the matter, you can prove that the phone that you want unlocked from iCloud is your own, or it belonged to someone that's passed, for instance, and you can prove that it belonged to them in the through receipts or what proof of ownership of any description of that nature. You can go to Apple, and if they accept that proof, they'll do the unlock on your behalf. Now, what that proves to me is two things. Firstly, there is a possibility of the unlock being able to be done. If Apple can do it, it can be done. So out there's some people saying it definitely can't be done. I'm not so sure and not convinced by that. Now, when it comes to a lot of the other people who are offering unlock services, I find the majority are complete and utter scams. They take your money and disappear, and the price is no indication of the scam. I found that some of the most expensive unlock services offered out there, and some of the cheapest too, were scams. So you can't really tell by looking at the price. The websites are often very convincing. So again, that's no indication. One of the things I have found is if there's no contact details on the website, that's a good indication that it's probably a bit dubious and to avoid. Also, if there's no about page where it gives you background information on who the website owner is, what the company details are, and this type of thing, again, that is an indication of something to be wary of. However, in my own personal tests, and I've written a long article on this, I found a couple of companies that did work for me and the community that I serve, and that was iPhone IMEI and Cell Unlocker. Now, below this video, you'll find links to these particular services and also a link to the full article where I discuss the review process that I went through and how I tested these particular companies. It also gives you more details on what iCloud unlocking is, and so that you've got a better understanding of the type of process that you're getting involved with. So I suggest that you go and have a look at that article to get further information, or if you're happy to give these companies a try, click the links that have been provided underneath, and again you can find more information, and you can go through to those companies and request their service and get a feel for which you personally prefer. In my opinion, iPhone IMEI are slightly better than Cell Unlocker, but both provide a good service and in the whole are worthy of trying. I hope you find this video useful, and if you've got any questions, then feel free to get in touch via the website.